Well, hello, my badass friends. My name is Cece, and this is my badass life. I'm on a roll, so I might as well continue, right? So interesting. We came here to Mexico. This is the backyard of the house that we're renting here, and it's interesting, right? Because during COVID, we were so careful not to get sick. We just, we were completely isolated, and we worked so hard not to get sick during COVID. And then cancer came along, and during cancer, the idea of getting an illness or a virus was absolutely taboo, because who knows what would happen if that happened. So once again, we were just so diligent and so careful, always protecting ourselves, and again, staying isolated. And then, of course, the political divide in our country has also lent itself to some isolation. So in many ways, it's just become easier for us to stay isolated. My immunity never completely bounced back after cancer treatment, and so we've just always erred on the side of caution in terms of both socializing as well as our personal hygiene when it comes to avoiding sickness. We're still masking on planes. Most people who we know who don't mask on planes end up getting sick. So it's just it's a personal preference, and it's just the way we operate. So now we're in Mexico, and it's a very different vibe here, and it's a lot freer. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. So literally, there are free events happening all over the city, because we're in a city, not on a beach. There are free events happening all over the city, outdoors all the time. So there are a lot of people who attend these amazing events. There was a music fest when we first got here, and now it's Carnival. And they're outdoors. So, we've allowed ourselves to be a little less diligent, just a little. So in other words, there are actually quite a few people here in Mexico who still wear masks. Imagine that. And many of them wear masks when they don't feel well in order to keep someone else from getting sick. What a concept. So actually there are quite a few people who still mask in Mexico, and we are still masking. Certainly when we go to the markets and they're super crowded and the aisles are very tight, we still mask there, but outdoor events we haven't been. We are able to eat out more frequently here. So one of the things we avoid at home are indoor restaurants, and there's a lot of those in Colorado. There's very few outdoor restaurants where we live. And here, almost every restaurant has either a patio or an open air courtyard, whether it's outside or inside the building, because here there are these old colonial buildings that have these amazing open air courtyards inside. And so we have eaten out more. Now, I still have to be careful about that because my semicolon doesn't always love restaurant food. And so that's been interesting too. So anyway, what's the point of all this? The point of all this is we have let our guard down just a tiny bit while we're here. And it's interesting what has happened. So we've been here about 5 weeks now. And about the second week we were here, I got food poisoning for 4 days. And actually, I think we figured out that I poisoned myself with something from the market that had spoiled, but we had also eaten out the night before, so it was really hard to tell. So I got food poisoning for 4 days. And so, that was the first time that I had been nauseous since cancer treatment. So boy, that brought up some PTSD, right? And of course, I had vomiting coming out both ends. It was just so fun. TMI, sorry. So I rid my body of that, and we started working on getting my microbiome back in shape, etc. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm sick, and actually sick with a virus sick. So it's been 9 years since I've had a viral illness. 9. And the last one that I had was really bad. It happened after my dad died. And it was a result of all the stress and grief and angst over that. Gosh, I can hardly talk about that. Isn't that funny? Anyway, I ended up with a really bad case of bronchitis that lasted for a couple of months. And once it finally resolved, I was better. And so again, then COVID came along, and we were so diligent during COVID. So anyway, 9 years later, post-cancer, and of course, post-cancer, one of the things that I said was, I just don't want to be sick again. When people ask me, why are you being so careful all the time? I understand, your immunity might be a little compromised, but, don't you need a little bit of exposure? And I feel like I was getting that anyway. But, people who are a little critical would be like, your body needs a little exposure, don't be so paranoid, blah, blah, blah. But quite honestly, I just never wanted to be sick again. Never, ever, ever. Because when you go through cancer treatment, you realize what it feels like to feel like shit all the time. And I remember what being sick was like, and I didn't want to be sick. So here I am now, sick. I've gotten this viral illness. It started with a sore throat. You can hear the scratchiness, etc. So I'm on about day 4 or 5 of that. And initially, I was completely panicked because I have this thing about not feeling like I can't breathe sometimes. And so sometimes I get a little panicky. I have some sinus issues anyway. So sometimes in the middle of the night, if I wake up and I'm completely stopped up and I can't breathe, I get a little panicky. Well, actually not a little panicky. It's almost like a little anxiety attack, really. And oftentimes it happens somewhere between like sleeping and waking, or I'll dream that I can't breathe and I wake up and I'm gasping for air. So when this first happened and my head was all stuffed up and the sore throat was happening and I felt like it was sort of choking me, I literally couldn't sleep for 2 days. And so I started getting, so basically PTSD type symptoms, trauma kind of inducing symptoms. It was very reminiscent of the fear that I felt during cancer treatment. I was, scared about being ill. And historically, I'm a pretty good person when I'm sick. Like I don't get whiny, and I'm not a baby, and I don't do any of those things. But I was totally like freaked out about this illness coming, and I had no idea how bad it was going to get. Still don't know exactly. But it does appear to be just kind of a cold, and a cold. An average cold, but I haven't had one of those in 9 years. So then it progressed to kind of anger, right? Like I was pissed. I'm like, geez, this is now the second week out of the 12 weeks that we're here that I'm out of commission. And so I'm like I feel like I've wasted two weeks of my life here being ill. And so I was really pissed off about that. So I sat and did some meditation and even some channeling work. And the message that came to me was that I'm finally releasing. I'm finally feeling like I can breathe. And what's funny is that being here in Mexico, we had hoped that we would really feel like we could breathe here and feel like we could let go of some of the stress from home and all of those things. But then, of course, the news cycle at the beginning of the year was just as bad, in fact, worse than it had been in most of 2025. And so, we were feeling all of that, even though geographically we were in a different place. We're still feeling all of that angst and stress from what's happening at home. So if you had said to me that my body was releasing and I was finally relaxing, I would have laughed in your face because I wouldn't have believed it. But in reality, I think that despite that, the situation at home, we are relaxing here. We are letting our guard down a little bit. Just case in point, it's a very open, accepting place here. And so, Amy and I can walk holding hands here without having to be suspicious of other people and them watching us. In fact, most people here just don't even notice. And that is so unlike what it's like at home. If you don't understand what it's like to always have to look over your shoulder when you share affection with your partner, then you're truly privileged. Because even in where we live in Colorado, we wouldn't do that openly on the street, not without at least checking our surroundings, or it wouldn't feel comfortable. And here we feel that comfort level. And so, yes, we've let our guard down some. We feel a little more comfortable. We've actually socialized a little more here than we have in the last several years, since before COVID started, since 2020, since COVID and cancer. We've started socializing just a little bit more. We've made a couple friends here, and we've interacted with people more than we have in years, and it's felt good. It doesn't feel overwhelming because we're not doing it too much. And I'm that HSP empath, so I'm the human sponge. So I have to be careful how much energy I give out and how much of other people's energy I take in. The bottom line is, I feel like we've relaxed some. So in my meditation and channeling work the other day, the message that I got was, "You're finally shedding." And so what that means is I'm finally breathing out. I'm finally releasing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that opened me up to illness. And yet, even though I'm ill, the idea here is that this illness is going to allow me to shed so much of what I've been carrying for so many years. Like I'm, that grip that I've had, that grip on my health. It's funny, I'm getting so emotional while sharing this. That death grip I've had on my health and staying healthy, and the death grip that I've had on trying to maintain control over my own life and my own destiny has just loosened up just a tiny bit here. And in some ways, this illness is actually proof of that. The two illnesses are actually proof of that. Food poisoning is a purging. This sore throat is sort of my it's sort of my throat chakra's way of saying, hey, there was a problem here. You're not using your voice. Like, speak up. And of course, all the snot that goes with it, also releasing, and everything is shedding. And so my hope is that after this, I actually might be better from an immunity perspective, and I might be like in a better place mentally, physically, metaphysically, because I really do believe in that mind, body, spirit approach to medicine. And yes, of course, it's a virus, and I actually know the exact moment when it happened. Many of the streets here are very narrow, and we were walking down the street one day coming from the market unmasked because we had already left the market, and somebody came out of a restaurant, and it looked, and what I remember is that it almost was like they were holding in a cough to get out of the restaurant to do it outside, and she literally walked outside the door as I was coming past, and the cough literally hit me. And normally in situations when I'm standing near somebody who coughs, I hold my breath, but I didn't have the chance to, and I literally think I swallowed her cough, and therefore I got sick. The timing works out kind of perfectly. So yes, this was a typical virus transmission, but what was happening in my emotions and my body and my metaphysical being sort of allowed it in, and there might be a very good reason for that, which is the shedding. So it's maybe a convoluted explanation for some, but it actually made quite a bit of sense to me. So that's where we're at. So while it does still feel a bit like 2 weeks wasted, because this week is Amy's birthday week and also our 24th anniversary, and we had some plans to go see the flamingos over in Celestune. We can do that next week. It's just, the time flies, right? It goes fast, and we're only here for a limited amount of time, at least this time. Who knows what the future will look like. As I mentioned in the last post, we're doing a lot of homework here to see what our options are. So anyway, all that to say that sometimes an illness is just an illness, and sometimes it's more. And so we will see how I feel once it's all passed. But finally today, I'm feeling better. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.